What's cracking, everybody? XehrFelrose here, bringing you some Pokemon Go Badly content. Today's video, we're taking a look at some top picks and teams in the Evolution Cup. This being one of the final, I think it is the final, actually. The final themed cup we have of the season before we get saddled with Catch Cup and then the final week to have all open leagues. So let's take a look at some of the best picks, at least in this meta. And I feel like, obviously, there's one or two standouts, but then I want to go into some other ones that I have a lot of interest in. We've had this meta twice before, so this isn't new. But there are a couple of new additions, like Primeape is one of them. As we've recently got Annihilate, Primeape is now eligible for this meta, as long as Niantic doesn't mess it up and code it the wrong way. So, Vigoroth, yes, the big bad. Okay, Vigoroth in this meta is ridiculous. It's OP, and as far as I'm concerned, it will be on every team. And as unfortunate as that is, we just kind of have to deal with it, right? So, you should expect there to be Vigoroth. If it's not in the lead, it's in the pack. It's just the nature of things. That's just how this stuff goes, man. But it's a good save swap. It's an incredibly good closer. I did some digging on this in this meta. Vigoroth has almost no losses in this whole meta if it's got a shield advantage. So no matter what you do with Vigoroth, you're probably getting shield advantage or winning switch or whatever it is that you need to do with that Vigoroth. So I'm just telling you now, if you like Vigoroth, this is the cup for you. And if you don't like Vigoroth, then maybe you take a week off. But Evolution Cup, aside from Vigoroth, it's actually a lot of fun. I'm a big fan of anything that Shadow Golbat is good in. I have a love for using Shadow Golbat. It's a lot of fun. Dusclops is a very, very strong Pokemon in this meta. PvPoke has it with Poltergeist. I personally think that you're either running Shadow Dusclops or Purified Dusclops. I think that it's better if it's one of those two variants, and I think that regular Dusclops is honestly not as good. Now, the reason I like Purified is because you have access to Return, which is a neutral, hard-hitting move, just like you have on Sableye. And the Shadow version, it does hit harder. It has spammy charge moves. You use Hex and you have Ice Punch. It has some other punches as well, Shadow Punch being one of them. And Dusclops also has Feint Attack, which is a Dark-type fast move, which is terrible in any other situation other than, like, the Mirror and against Vigoroth. So just keep that in mind. Zweilous and Dragonair are both very strong, oppressive Dragon Breath users. In fact, in this meta, there's basically no Steel, and there's no Fairy. So Dragons are very good in this meta. Arctibax is another new addition to the meta that I like a lot. It is able to plow through so many things because it's slightly bulkier than a lot of the other dragons. It also has access to Icy Wind and Dragon Claw, very good moveset. And Charge-a-Bug being right above it is another thing that we've had recently come into the meta. It was like fringe meta last time we had it, but now that it's got Volt Switch, it's going to be here. It's going to be here to stay. It's basically going to be the Golbat killer. Also has fairly good matchups into Primeape, which is, obviously, as we mentioned, something that's going to be new, but unfortunately, Charge-a-Bug, unless it correctly shields the Rock Slides, it does have a very bad time against Vigoroth, at least in the ones. Something worth noting, Charge-a-Bug wins the 0 shield and the 2 shield scenario against Vigoroth. So at least keep that in mind as you play against it. You will lose the 1s, but if you can manage the 0s or 2s, you're in a good spot. I like Haunter. Haunter's always been a fun. It's glassy. We don't talk about number 21. As far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't exist, but I know there are some of you goofballs out there who are going to run it. So if you do, I will shame you all week, and that's all there is to that. And once we get past, I mean, this is a very small condensed meta. I'm going to be honest. You're probably not going to see anything past 25. You might see a Magneton in there somewhere. Metang is going to be very spicy. It's like basically Lairon and Metang are basically there as the steel types in this meta that have terrible movesets. Iron Tail recently getting a buff may make Lairon something interesting, but at least in my opinion, for the most part, this is a very condensed meta where it's going to centralize around Vigoroth and teams with Vigoroth or teams that are trying to beat Vigoroth. And in that vein, let's talk about the teams. So the first team here, I think this is going to be the most meta team. And personally, I think that if you have one, I think Hakamo would probably be a better fit for the Zweilous slot. Just because Hakamo having Brick Break and Dragon Claw allow it to actually beat Vigoroth quite convincingly. It's a very good matchup for it. So if you're trying to get a little bit more of an edge on Vigoroth, you certainly can get one with that, with replacing that in this team. But Zweilous, otherwise, very good, very strong. Shadow on either Golbat, it doesn't matter one way or the other. There are some matchups that you gain, and there are also some that you lose, so it's just going to be a difference of your preference, honestly. I'm a big personal preference towards the Shadow version of it, just because that's, you know, I just like the heavier hitting moves, and I know that Golbat's already kind of glassy as it is. It's not super glassy, but it's glassy enough, right? So let's look at this team here. Good letter grades as well. We get A's, CBA. Very good coverage on the meta. Any team with Vigoroth is going to have good coverage on the meta because Vigoroth beats most of the meta. So you can definitely take Vigoroth out for something like Primeape, and if you want to put Hakamo in over the Zweilous, you have a team that everything beats Vigoroth. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the first team here is usually the big bad meta team. I feel like this might be the one to beat. So, you know, Charjabug could have very good play into this team because the X-Scissor sits super effective against Zweilous, even though the Dragon Breaths definitely take out the Charjabug before it can really get to enough damage to get to 2 X-Scissors and then some. But Golbat and Vigoroth, just this team is so strong. It's really obnoxiously strong. And I feel like Golbat having that very quick Poison Fang is going to be a very common lead in this meta. So you should expect there to probably be a lot of Golbat, Safe Swap, Vigoroth, something in the back that's weak to fighting, because that's just how this meta looks like it's going to be. So as far as threats go, though, this team has coverage against every single thing in this meta. There's no blind spots here, and it looks really good. So let's take a look at number 2. And normally I try to keep it so that all 5 teams have unique Pokemon. There are definitely some unique picks, but you're going to probably see a lot of Golbat and Vigoroth, and I'm sorry. Team number 2, we're going to take a look at Vigoroth and 2 things in the back that beat Vigoroth. So Primeape. Right, your opponent has, and this, I think the Vigoroth could be something else too, if you want. Perhaps maybe something that beats like the Golbat, right? Because that could be an issue, right? You have a Primeape in the back as well, so perhaps maybe not Vigoroth in the lead, but Vigoroth being that thing that can like basically 2-shield its way through almost everything, and then you have Dusclops, Primeape in the back. And if the opponent has a Vigoroth hiding in the back, it has absolutely nowhere to go. And here's the thing, too, about Vigoroth in the mirror. You instantly lose switch advantage if you swap in your own Vigoroth to an opponent's Vigoroth that's already been swapped in. Like, a head 1 counter, Vigoroth wins the mirror in every even shield, so you're either going to give up shield advantage or you're going to lose switch. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to try to counter swap into a Vigoroth, don't do it with your own Vigoroth unless you start by getting shield advantage or a significant health advantage first. That's the only time that would be okay to do. But Vigoroth, Primeape, Dusclops has, again, decent letter grades. Like I said, anything with Primeape is going to have an A probably. Not the bulkiest team around. You know, Dusclops is really going to be your anchor here as far as being able to keep the team, you know, bulked up enough to try and deal with some threats. We have Ice Punch and Night Slash on the Primeape to deal with some of its threats. I honestly just want to put Primeape in the back so I can counter swap it into somebody's Vigoroth, punch it all the way down, and have all this energy to just dump into whatever's in the lead. So that's why I put Primeape back here, but you know, you can make any like-minded change if you like. You could put a Golbat in the back if you're worried about fighting in the lead, right? Stuff like that. But this team, very solid, again, has coverage into everything. Absolutely everything. There is no blind spots. That's the thing with a Vigoroth team, pretty much like Vigoroth Golbat, Vigoroth Dusclops. Pretty much those 2 by themselves have coverage against everything in this meta aside from themselves. And so in this team, what we did was we just covered, you see how Vigoroth is not quite covered. We just put something in here that covers Vigoroth and you're good. So let's take a look at team number 3 because now we're going to get a little bit more interesting, I promise. Okay, another Primeape, but we have Arctibax. Arctibax, I think, is the dragon of choice in this meta. It and Dragonair go very, very closely together for me. I think that they're both extremely strong and will both have a lot of play. And I think that it depends on, you know, where you want to go with the team. You could even run double dragon, triple dragon if you want to. But what we did was we put the Arctibax in the lead because of its ice typing. It's weak to Vigoroth and other fighters. So we put 2 things in the back that beat Vigoroth. And once again, you could put any 2 things in the back that beat Vigoroth. I just like Primeape because I think he's neat. And I also like Golbat because I think it's neat. But team gets an A. It's an F for bulk because this team is extremely glassy. Even though Arctibax is fairly bulky, I feel like Primeape is honestly just bringing it down. And we have Shadow Golbat in this one as well. So lots of matchups, lots of coverage. Again, we have a team that beats everything in the meta in one way or the other. It's just going to matter, you know, alignment ends up being an issue for some of this stuff. Like Dusclops could probably outbulk an Arctibax, and then Primeape doesn't have enough Night Slashes in its arsenal to be able to take out a full Dusclops. But there's a lot of really solid play in this team, and I think it's going to do really well in this meta. It's really going to take a difference of, you know, what's in the back. But if you, like I said, man, you counter swap that Primeape into the Vigoroth, it doesn't matter what's in the lead, because the amount of just sheer energy that Primeape is going to put out with that and damage it's going to put out is just nuts. So let's get a look at team number 4. Okay, so we've got a team with Haunter, Vigoroth, and Dragonair. This team features basically the 2 best safe swaps in this meta, and then has Haunter, because we like Haunter. Haunter's fun. You could run Haunter with anything on its move pool. You could run it with Shadow Punch, Ice Punch, Shadow Ball, Sludge Bomb. All of them are going to be pretty effective in this meta, so it's really just up to personal preference and what you think you want to do here. But Haunter is so glassy and so offensively weighted, it can tear through anything that's not Vigoroth. And I do believe that Haunter does win the 2 shields scenario into Vigoroth as well. So if you do happen to catch a lead with Vigoroth and you don't want to safe swap out of it into something else, like if you wanted to swap out into your Dragonair or something, because regular Dragonair is able to also beat Vigoroth narrowly in the 1 shield scenario. So there's a couple of matchups that need to be, you know, kind of aware of here. But this team is very solid. Again, we have an A and then an F for bulk, because we're dealing with a very glassy team. But the team itself has a lot of coverage. Hakumo in this case and Vigoroth being the only things. I could have sworn Vigoroth, wait, is it Shadow Dragonair perhaps? I could have sworn when I looked at it, Shadow Dragonair lost and regular won, but I guess in this case it doesn't matter. I looked at some of the sims and they said that regular Dragonair wins against Vigoroth, so I don't know, man. This game is just confusing me even more as we speak, but Vigoroth and Hakumo being the only things that are kind of sus against this, but again, you know, a Haunter can beat Vigoroth, and I know you're about to tell me it can, yeah. Vigoroth only loses, or only wins in the 1s. Never mind, that's backwards. Oh my goodness. Haunter only wins in the, what? Vigoroth loses, but it wins over here. I'm so confused. This Sims is confusing me. Anyway, just so you know, Haunter wins the 1s and loses the 0s and the 2s. So if it takes a rock slide, it pretty much eats it, but it can win the 1s. I'm getting confused now. We're just gonna, all right, I'm all over the place, dude. But aside from that, you have a solid team here to have fun with Haunter. If that's your goal, Haunter's a very good Pokemon to have fun with. And so we're gonna move on to Team 5 before I confuse myself any further. Because this team I am familiar with. This is the team that I've run, at least getting started, the past 2 times we've had this meta. Piloswine is an underrated, extremely strong Pokemon in this meta. It's so good against the Golbat leads. Also going to be able to do well against most of the Chargebugs as well as some of the Dragons. It is fairly frail, it's glassy, but the ability for it to force opponents to swap out or allow you to read bad situations for the opponent that it core breaks, like you see a Golbat in the lead, the opponent stays in that, that's a bad time for them. They got a Dragon in the back, right? Like the first team we had is Zweilous in the back, that might be a good tell. But we have Piloswine and 2 things in the back that beat Vigoroth, and the reason why Piloswine is because a Avalanche does a significant amount of damage to a Vigoroth, where if you play out so that you end up getting, like, you know, you get some farm on the Piloswine, you come back in, you get the Avalanche off. Like, for example, you know, you get that Vigoroth on the lead, right? You can swap into Golbat, they counter swap whatever they're going to counter swap, you get the farm with Piloswine, and then you hit them with an Avalanche, and they either shield it or they don't, but they are going to either take a ton of damage or go down to shield, and then Dusclops comes in to do Dusclops things, and then hopefully in the same situation again. And they really have to hard counter this team and try to do it to beat it. It's such a strong team, I can really advocate for this team, and again, I prefer the Shadow version of Golbat and the return version of Dusclops for better Vigoroth matchups. And everything on this team, except for the Piloswine, beats Vigoroth, but I have played into this team so many times I can tell you that Vigoroth leads are not the worst thing in the world. Let's see how much damage that Avalanche does, because it's a significant amount. And yes, I know, Vigoroth does win the matchup, but an Avalanche does over half of its HP. A Stone Edge does under half, that's because it's not stab. Avalanche does over half of its HP. So over the course of the game, I guarantee you that you will probably whittle this Vigoroth down to a point where it will be under or around half, or maybe some powder snows plus the avalanche will do it. But it's definitely something. I love this team so much. Celio is awkward for this team because you're hitting the Celio for resisted damage unless you have the Stone Edge, which I probably would run in this meta. Because there's not as many things that are weak to ground as there are that are weak to Stone Edge. I believe I was running Stone Edge when I was running this team last. And overall, the things that this team doesn't have as much coverage into are very, very unique and uncommon things. Like Celio is one of them, Lanoon, Laron, Piloswine itself, and then at that point, you've got coverage into this meta. And I think that this team is so consistent and strong, I can really recommend it. So if you stayed around this long, I might as well let you know that I have the ability to coach people, and I do it on Metafy. And you can check out the link in the pinned comment and description to find out more and all the different lessons and courses that I offer, as well as just live coaching, for gameplay. And I also have a Discord server that is Patreon and YouTube membership. I know that it's a paywall, yawn, but it's got a lot of really good information in it. I put all of my teams and my meta analysis. The stuff that's in this video and then some was in a Discord post for everybody to see, like Tuesday. Like, it's been there for a while. So maybe it'll be Wednesday because I'm recording this on Tuesday and I haven't done it yet, but it's coming, I promise. Anyway, before I make myself look worse, that's gonna do it for me for today's video, folks. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Best of luck in the Evolution Cup. Bye-bye.